A painful problem. As much as I wanted to blame my dad for not raising me to be a man, the truth was that my father, like me, had been born into a game of sedation that had been going on for almost a century. It wasn't created by my father, and long before we were born, the game was in place, spinning out of control inside of our country and inside of the world, taking men from a place of power and putting them into a place of powerlessness. Ultimately, to take him from a place of having a voice as kings and putting them into the shack and living as peasants. And by the time my father was born, this was all he knew. He didn't understand why or how or what he was experiencing and feeling. And the last thing in the world that he was able to do was actually talk with anybody about it. But why had this happened? See, I wanted to know. I wanted to understand how we had gotten here. Because every man that I looked around and every man that I came in conversation with were far and few between. There were those who were willing to beat the drum the way the modern men beat it, and as we call it in the leveraged way, live in a place of power that is uncanny. In contrast to the society that we live in, and there's a rising epidemic of disconnected teenagers and men in their 20s and 30s who are literally becoming dysfunctional at actually living, let alone what's happening to the men who are in their 40s and 50s. And let's not forget, the suicide rates have gone through the roof. For men in their 60s, divorce rates are running rampant. And the number one demographic of divorces that we're experiencing here inside the United States is coming from women in their 50s. The moment that kids graduate from high school and college, that they move on, the wives are like, forget you, I'm out of here. And the men that are left are hollow and alone. And they don't know why, and the truth is that there are tons of programs out there to help women. Tons. But when was the last time you saw one to help men? It didn't exist. At least I didn't find it. And that is why we built the Black Box, because over the last 5 years, I uncovered the systematic sedation that we're going to speak about right now, and in the historical buildup to what is happening now, but not only to how we solved it, but how we're solving it for men just like you. In order to understand how my dad got to this place and how you did too, we've got to go back to the early 1900s, even to the end of the 1800s, into the beginning of what was to become known as the Industrial Age, or the Industrial Revolution. There was a fundamental shift in the way that living occurred here inside of the United States and around the world that would ultimately affect everyone. So, as capitalism in its form of industrialism began to rise, the following situation occurred. We had come from an agrarian society, a way of living in which the following reality occurred. Dad, mom, and family, they co-created together as feminine and masculine equals, and at the same time distinct and different in their roles. But here is how it went. Dad would wake up in the morning, he would go to work on the farm, he would go to work in his community, buy the house, and guess who got to watch this and participate every single day? Little Timmy. Little Timmy would go to work with his dad. Little Timmy was seeing and being role modeled how parenting worked. But it wasn't a dad disappeared for a day and then returned home to guide his children from breakfast to lunch to dinner. Dad was an active role, a role of modeling to children. Respect, education, hard work, fear of God, connection to the Queen, and respect and responsibility. It wasn't something that you might but know. It was something that was possibly happening every single day. Dad was dad, demonstrating this to his sons. Now, what shifted was we shifted from the agrarian age in which dad and mom every day raised the children. There was a co-parenting relationship. Dad was not sent away. Mom was not sent away. There was this home base and family mattered. And there was a connection at the home. It was the most important connection that existed. And then the subtle insertion of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution offered up a promise. The promise itself is an interesting one, yet it was very appealing. And how do we know? Because it changed the entire world. The way that we know it, and for some people, it's bad. It's horrible. It's awful. And I'm not here to say that the Industrial Revolution was a problem, or it's bad, or it's wrong, or it's awful. It wasn't that at all. It was what it was, right? We wouldn't have the life, both the blessing and the curse of it, without it. So the Industrial Revolution said, hey, listen here, this is what I want you to do. And they began to make this proposition to families. Move away from the farm, move into the city, and dad is going to go work. And when dad goes to work, he's going to go to work all day long. And he'll be gone. You're not going to see him. Dad's going to leave in the morning and he's going to go to work. He's going to work all day long. He's not going to see little Timmy through the day, just like he did out in the farm. He's not going to see little Timmy like he did out on the family ranch. He's not going to see little Timmy at all. He's going to see little Timmy when he comes home. And so what dad's going to do is dad's going to go into the workforce. He's going to work all day long, exhaust all of his energy producing. Inside of here, we go to the machine. So dad was not only being taken off the agrarian experience of being able to work with little Timmy every day, but dad was also being destroyed in his creativity. Where on the farm in the agrarian experience, he was rewarded for his creativity, his innovation, his ability to solve problems. Inside of the industrial game, however, he was actually punished for innovation, for creativity, and for trying to solve problems. He went from being a king to a cog, a king in his home, praised in adoration by his children and his wife, to a cog in the ATM machine. And so every day, dad would go through this journey, leave the home to go to a factory to work, return home with what little energy he had left after being treated as a cog and after his creativity, innovation, being stifled and no longer outside in the fresh air, being with his hands in the dirt. He would be stifled into a box, into a building, in which most times he wouldn't even see the sun that day. And he would come home in that fatigued state and attempt to fulfill the role as a father and try to be there for his kids. And the reason why it was okay was because the money was better. There was more money, and so mom and the kids were actually having the opportunity inside of the city to experience some things they didn't get to experience out on the ranch, out on the farm. So there were better clothes, there was a better house, there was more social networks, and there was more friends around. And dad? Well, dad looked at it like this was good. And dad saw this experience that it was beautiful, that it was good. And slowly through the game was a different mom who also started to say things like, it's okay, hon. I know you're tired. You're doing everything you can to provide for the family. And over a series of 10 and 20 years, an entire generations of boys were raised by fathers who only saw them for an hour, maybe two at night. And all day long, they were being raised by their mom. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but just like all journeys that we take, if I get on a path and I'm heading in a specific trajectory and I get 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees difference, right, in the pivot, in the beginning, it doesn't look like much. We're here like, yeah, it's not that really, that's not that noticeable. It's not really that noticeable, right? It's kind of like I don't take my wife out on a date. No big deal, right? I don't see my wife for a few days because I'm working a bunch. No big deal, right? It doesn't look like a major deal, but it's a hinge upon which major change was about to be brought to the families, to couples, to men, upon this simple idea that, Dad, your job is to be a cog and bring home the bacon, to hunt the buffalo by being a cog in the system. And inside of this factory, of this industrial revolution, you were looked upon now as a tool of production, not a king with counsel to provide for your family. The emotional, financial, social, spiritual support that you were once required to live and teach, now we're just going to have you go out there and produce, to go make the money so that the industrial revolution continues. And into that entire genre of day and age that we bring into this World War I, World War II, we have these boys, these men who have been called into the industrial revolution who were not raised, right? Timmys were not raised to see the role modeling of what it is to be a man, and the greatest wars that our country had ever known and the world had ever known at that time began to ensue. Inside of this came these drafts and these opportunities for men to be able to move, to be able to go charge forward in defense of freedom and liberty here inside the United States. And these men did it by the droves. They packed up, they signed up, they enlisted, and they went forth in the military. There was no room for your feelings. There was no room for feeling anything. We needed to take those feelings and suppress them. We need to suppress any feelings that you're having, to get rid of them, because your feelings will get in the way of your ability to kill another man and to defend the truths that we hold so relevant here inside the United States of America. You've got to go fight these wars of old men. So little Timmy, who was disconnected from dad, learned to shut down his feelings. And entire generations of men were taught that their role was to not only hunt the buffalo, but at the same time was to not feel, because feeling itself was not safe and you could die. Now, while the men are gone, the women are left back home, and society still has to continue inside the Industrial Revolution. And so for the first time inside the United States, we see a spike, a huge rise inside of the employment of women. And women begin to go take the replacement pieces of men who are now at war. Year after year, as these wars continued, the women moved into the workforce and took over the responsibility. And God blessed them for having to raise the kids and also have to go to work. The highest level of employment of women are now supplying all the clothes and all the food and the supplies of all the military necessities. They're working every single day. And little Mary and little Sarah and all the other kids of the household are now seeing the following. They see dad disappearing as a cog, and mom is now having to work too. And now that brother Timmy has gone to war and this chaos is starting to build. And so we insert the second conversation, which is an entire generation who are told to not feel. When they return home from the wars, they become fathers. They've not only been born into a system that says you go and hunt and then you come home. You are an ATM machine. And the second piece is don't fucking bitch about it. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't talk about your emotions. That is not being a man. Being a man means you get your shit done. You come home, you don't bitch about it. You don't talk about it. You don't get emotional about it. You hold a stoic position. And in the 1960s, things began to change here inside the United States also. This became the first time as we went from the 60s to the 70s in the feminist movement, which is now where women are now beginning to fight for the right to vote. And I agree with this. It's a great movement. Women should have been equal inside of that opportunity to have a voice, to share, and they deserve it. But what it sparked into this game was a twisted, bastardized version of this feminist movement, which said that we don't need men. We're not just equal, they are unnecessary. We can do for ourselves anything that they can do for us. Men, we don't need men to live. We don't need men to create. So inside of the feminist movement, it said that we want to have a voice. And then the twisted version became, we want to have a voice and we want equality in who we are. But in that same game, we want to say that we are the same. Equality became, we are the same. And in being the same, we don't need you. And this became the giant rift of depolarization of couples. Men who are now having to compete with masculine energy with their woman. Not only to go out and hunt, but now they're going out to hunt and I am an ATM machine, right? And I can't have any feelings. And when I come home, it's not safe anymore because now I'm competing with the queen, right? Inside of my own frickin' home. But it gets worse. It's already bad enough that I gotta go fight these assholes all day. And then when I come home, I can't talk about my feelings. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. This whole feminine movement thing is a little bit confusing. But okay, I can support it. And wait a second. Now I'm competing with you? We're the same now? When there couldn't be anything further from the truth. A penis and a vagina will never be the same thing. A woman and a man are not the same thing. They never will be. I don't care if you're a lesbian. I don't care if you're straight. There are women and there are men. Men and women are not the same thing at all. And I don't care what your tendencies are or what your energy is or how you feel. Men and women are not the same thing. Never have been and never will be. They can be equal, but they will never be the same thing. And this became another subtle insertion of a lie into our society, built upon the goodness that you are an ATM, followed by that you are a mute and that you don't feel. Definitely don't talk about how you feel and insert now, hey, we're the same. An internal competition in the workforce and also competition at home that begins to skyrocket. So as masculinity inside of the woman begins to rise and men begin to get confused at levels that they've never been confused about before, how do I deal with this conflict? How do I deal with this engagement? How do I actually show up as a man when I'm confused about whatever the fucking it means to be a man? Because I'm looking at this woman and she's kind of like, I'm not going to pull her over. She's kind of like showing up as this dude right now. But like, wait a second, I'm not supposed to hit a girl. But wait a second, she's fucking yelling at me and just punched me in the face. So wait, she's acting like a dude now. And should I dude up on her or no, I can't. I don't know. It's so confusing. This confusion is running rampant for men because it's completely misidentified. We don't even know what being a man is anymore because everywhere we turn, men are being disappointed, disjointed, disconnected, and they're being told, listen, shut the fuck up and go get the money. Don't talk about your feelings and just, we don't need you because we're the same now. Now, this quantifies us at an even bigger level, the information age. The information age begins here in the late 1990s, early 2000s, when for the first time information becomes proliferated around the world in ways that through the internet that has never been available. And men and women begin to search out significance and insight through the onslaught of information and what was available through these mobile devices that called our cell phones. It wouldn't become massive for a few more years, and we start to see information drowning us. And men and women, we're searching for answers, but the more information we get, the more confusing it gets. Because we think that information will actually liberate us, but information doesn't liberate us because information doesn't address the fact that we now have 75 plus years of patterns being built, being ingrained and children born of men and women, and all of a sudden we're 4 or 5 generations down in the game. I've got guys and boys who are born into a world that makes no sense. And what's happening during this information age, banking begins to explode. And we're like, okay, I need to be an ATM. And all this information around me that's telling me and resurfacing and telling me, hey, listen, this is what needs to happen. I need to go out there and make more money. And the web is also starting to give us opportunities to make more money, right? So off we go as men, searching for and hunting down this opportunity. But there's confusion. And the confusion part has become something known inside of the psychological terms as inside of what psychiatrists will call the extended adolescence, right? Divorce rates are running rampant in the last 15, 20 years. Rampant higher divorce rates than we have ever had. More single moms with children than what we have ever had in our planet's history. More disease, more dysfunction physically than we've ever had. More disappointment and the exodus from religion that we've ever had. More governments are being toppled and confusion inside of the political regimes that we've ever had. Information has not made this stuff better. Information has accelerated the inevitability of the explosion of the world, the way that we know it. And inside of that, it's exposed this reality of boys who are staying boys long into their 30s and 40s, now who are saying, you know what? I don't know how to win this game. I don't know how to win this game. I don't know how to be a man. So guess what? Nobody's teaching me how to be a man. Reality television is not teaching me how to be a man. YouTube is not teaching me how to be a man. Social media is not teaching me how to be a man. Government, political officers, they're not teaching me how to be a man. Everybody's fucking getting divorced. Nobody's staying married ever, it feels like. And this is the damn nightmare. So what I'm going to do, I'm just not going to grow up. Since there was no clear definition of what it means to be a man, I'm going to stop being a man at all. I'm going to quit even before I try to become any sort of man. I'm going to stay a boy. And why wouldn't you want to stay a boy? I mean, hell, at 38, 39, 40 years old, if you can still run around like a 22-year-old frat boy, play World of Warcraft every single night, play Call of Duty on your gaming system, go golf, get sex, get laid with these girls that are 10 years younger than you, then why wouldn't you ever want to grow up? And yet, the foundation of our society is driven by kings. And the men and the way that they lead inside of their own families. And the family is being destroyed. And the boys that are being born into this game have no clear path. So where does this lead? All of these individuals, right? The banking collapse in 2007, that was an onslaught, and the exposure of social media generation. Also, the information age birthed the social media age, and then all of a sudden, we as boys, we start quoting men that we can find significance with online in an unreal way. There's Tinder, Pinterest, Instagram. All of a sudden, a world that did not exist created an opportunity for boys to stay boys even longer. And then for disconnected men to continue to hide. Pornography and the rise online. It is considered right now that over 35% of all content consumed on the web is pornographic in nature by men. And why are they buying porn? Why are they masturbating daily? Why is this occurring? Because men have no frickin' idea what it is to be a man. And the only answer that society has delivered up is be the man. Right? And women are trying to play two sides of this equation. On one side, they're trying to play the old school tactic of being a woman, which says, be the man. They don't even know what that means. How do I know? Because guess what? My wife would say to me, be the man. And can you please help me understand what the heck you're talking about? Like, if you had some kind of magic formula of what be the man means, like outside, go make money, pay the bills, because that's the only story I'm hearing. Because when I make enough money to pay the bills, the game itself stops. You say, be the man. And then be the man means go get this. And at the same time, I'm now expected to take care of the home, right? The kids, helping, cuddling with you while you build your career. Yet at the same time, you want me to go be the man, hunt, right? And yet I'm supposed to be the caregiver. Like, I don't know how to be a man anymore, right? And this is what my marriage was, plummeting to divorce. And some of you were like, well, it's because you cheated. Well, definitely that's part of the equation. It was already plummeting to divorce before I did that. Because not my wife nor I had an answer. Do you think my dad had an answer? No. Do you think my church leaders had an answer? No, their answer was pray to God. Well, that's nice. I appreciate your little Sunday school answer here, but it's not cutting it with me. And it's not cutting it with any of the thousands of men that I'm engaging with every single week. We need something more. So what is the definition of a man? We knew what a one-dimensional man looked like, and it was us. It was us telling us it was really easy. Go out there, make some money, work out, and hopefully inside of that, you'll get laid a couple times a week, right? So you can feel good about yourself, and then if your wife doesn't want to put out, no problem. We'll go to porn. We'll just jerk it off, right? And if that doesn't work, we'll cheat. And inside of this, men were left with no guidance system at all. And you know what? This isn't about women attacking. This isn't about women being wrong or women doing something stupid. Women were just as oblivious in this game as we are. Our entire society is plummeting into chaos because men are not leading men. Even our political systems are not being led by kings anymore. They're being led by sedated little men, little boys, right? And what runs rampant when the body itself is not healthy? A virus, a cancer begins to build. It begins to destroy us from the inside out. And it's happening everywhere. And when I saw this, I realized it wasn't even our fault. And I was sharing this information with a friend one day, and I was like, dude, we're all screwed. Like, I don't even know what we're supposed to do with this. We are all screwed. How are we going to fix this? And he's like, dude, why don't you fix this? And I was kind of feeling like most leaders do when it comes to attacking a giant problem. We said, well, who am I to fix this? Who am I to do this, right? Who am I to step up and do this, right? I'm not a great man to lead this movement here. So who am I to start this conversation? Who am I to define what it is to be a man, to be a warrior in this society? And long before society started questioning me and my validity and who I am, or whether or not I'm qualified, or whether or not I belong to lead, or whether or not this message that we share is even real. So whether or not leveraged is just some freaking cult out there, or whatever we see that we say what we belong to, this shit began well before that for me. I was asking myself those questions. Who am I to lead, right? I screwed up a lot of stuff in my life, and so who am I to do this thing really? So why not one of those other nice preachers on TV? Why not Joel Osteen or someone who seems like they've got their shit together? At least that appears that way anyways. So why not one of those clean-cut guys, And I'm a bit of a maniac. Why me, dude? Why me? My friend looked over at me and said, listen, dude, if it's not you, then who? If it's not you, then who? And who more qualified than a guy who has genuinely fucked everything up to build the map on the way out of the gates of hell and to this place of power? You speak about this have-it-all situation, but you don't have it. So why don't you go out and figure out how to build this? And this one idea began a revolution. When I looked around at the results in our society in this one-dimensional training, what I saw were men who were alone, depressed, hiding, sick, suffering, struggling, hurting, confused, frustrated, suicidal, homicidal, addicted, dying, and alone. And I knew what it was like to feel all of those things. And so I took that on. I said, if it's not me, then who? And I said, I don't know who else it would be, but I'm going to give it a shot. Not to lead their lives. No, I just want to liberate mine. If you like this video, then you have to watch this one next.